He was a powerful CEO, a man who had everything money could buy. But when he hired a nanny for his twins, he had no idea she'd be the one to heal the broken pieces of his family and his heart. Before we begin, where are you watching from tonight? Drop it in the comments below. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, settle in, because this isn't just a story about love. It's a story about loss, forgiveness, and a quiet kind of healing that sneaks up on you when you least expect it. The mansion on Hawthorne Hill stood silent against a fading light, its glass walls gleaming coldly in the dusk. From a distance, it looked perfect, too perfect. Every line was deliberate, every shadow carefully placed. But inside, the air was heavy, the kind of quiet that feels alive, pressing against the walls like a held breath waiting to break. Adrian Voss sat in his study, the only light coming from the glow of a computer screen. 37 years old, brilliant, controlled, and entirely alone. The world called him a visionary, a man who built beauty out of steel and glass. But the truth was simpler and sadder. He didn't build to inspire. He built to forget. 3 years ago, he lost his wife in a car crash. Since then, silence had replaced laughter, work had replaced rest, and duty had replaced love. His life ran like clockwork, every hour accounted for, every emotion contained. His heart still beat, but it hadn't lived in years. Down the hall, 2 small rooms told a quieter story. Leo and Luna, 6-year-old twins with the same eyes as their father, had learned early that noise didn't belong in this house. Their laughter, once wild and bright, now lived in whispers. Their world was one of schedules, tutors, and polite goodnights. They adored their father, even if they barely knew him. Nannies came and went, each one swallowed by the mansion's quiet perfection. Some left because they couldn't meet his impossible standards. Others left because they couldn't stand the emptiness that lingered long after the lights went out. And then, one morning, a car that didn't belong turned up the long driveway, a small silver hatchback that looked like it had seen more real life than the mansion ever had. From it stepped a woman named Celeste Rowan. Her hair caught morning light, golden, unpolished, free. Her eyes were a calm, steady blue that seemed to see right through walls. She walked to the front door not like someone arriving for a job, but like someone walking into a story she didn't yet understand. Inside, the twins hid behind the staircase, peeking through the railings. Luna clutched her brother's sleeve, both half curious, half afraid. Celeste knelt down the moment she saw them, lowering herself to their height, her voice soft and kind. "I brought cookies," she said with a conspiratorial smile. "But I might need help eating them." For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then Leo's lips twitched. Luna giggled. And just like that, the mansion silence cracked. It wasn't much, just the sound of 2 children laughing, but it was enough to change the air, enough to remind the walls what warmth felt like. Adrian appeared moments later, tall, poised, carrying the weight of someone who had long forgotten how to feel at ease in his own home. His gaze met Celeste across the foyer, sharp blue-gray eyes meeting calm sapphire. Their handshake was brief, formal, yet something passed between them, something neither of them could name. 2 worlds collided, one made of order and distance, the other of gentle defiance and quiet warmth. And though neither of them knew it yet, that single meeting, a smile, a handshake, a laugh in the hallway, was the beginning of everything. For the first time in years, the mansion on Hawthorne Hill wasn't completely silent. It had remembered what laughter sounded like. Morning light spilled across the marble floors of the Voss mansion, soft but hesitant, as if unsure it belonged there. Celeste Rowan moved quietly through the vast foyer, her footsteps barely echoing. She took in the polished surfaces, the perfect symmetry, the kind of order that looked impressive but felt cold. Everything gleamed, yet nothing felt alive. The twins watched her from the staircase again, their small faces half hidden. Leo held a toy car in one hand. Luna clutched a stuffed bear, missing one button eye. Celeste turned toward them and smiled, not the kind of polite smile that adults offer children, but something genuine, warm and patient, like sunlight slowly melting ice. "Good morning," she said softly. "Do you two always wake up this early, or are you just guarding the stairs?" Luna tilted her head. "We're not supposed to run inside." Celeste crouched down, until her eyes met theirs. Ah, so you're rule keepers. That's important. She paused, lowering her voice conspiratorially. But what if we run outside? Does that count? Leo blinked at her, caught off guard. Daddy says we can't get dirty before breakfast. She smiled again, gentle but mischievous. Then maybe we'll start small. Pancakes first. Dirt later. For a second, the corners of Leo's mouth lifted. A smile cautious but real. Later that morning, the kitchen smelled like butter and vanilla. Celeste stood by the stove, hair tied loosely back, flipping pancakes shaped like stars and hearts. Luna giggled as she tried to sneak chocolate chips onto the pan when Celeste wasn't looking. Leo, standing on a stool, watched in awe as the pancakes puffed up. Adrian walked in then, stopping just short of the kitchen doorway. He wasn't used to this sound. Laughter. Not forced, not polite. Real laughter. He leaned on the doorframe, arms crossed, his usual mask of composure faltering. For a brief moment, he simply watched. Celeste noticed him but didn't turn immediately. She kept her focus on the twins, her voice light. All right, chefs, who wants to be my official pancake inspector? Luna raised her hand. Leo followed a moment later. Finally, Celeste glanced over her shoulder. Good morning, Mr. Voss. Hope you're hungry. We're conducting very serious quality control here. Adrian's gaze shifted from her to the twins, who were proudly presenting their star-shaped creations. He almost smiled, but old habits ran deep. He cleared his throat instead. They usually eat cereal. Celeste nodded thoughtfully. Then today they'll try something new. She set 2 small plates in front of the twins and said quietly, sometimes change can taste sweet. Adrian hesitated, a flicker of something unguarded passing across his face. He left the kitchen without another word. In the days that followed, the mansion began to change in ways no one could quite explain. It started small, a drawing taped to the refrigerator, soft music drifting to the living room, the faint scent of cookies baking in the afternoon. The twins began leaving their rooms without waiting to be called. Their laughter grew louder, echoing through halls that had forgotten how to hold sound. Celeste never forced anything. She simply brought warmth where there had been none. She read stories at night, not because it was part of her job, but because she could see how much the twins needed it, how much they missed being seen, being heard. And little by little, Adrian found himself noticing. One evening, he came home late again, his tie loosened, exhaustion shadowing his face. He paused at the sound of voices from the living room. There she was, sitting cross-legged on the floor, a storybook open in her lap. Leo leaning against her shoulder, Luna tucked under her arm. Her voice was soft, melodic. The twins listened with wide eyes, completely at peace. Adrian stood in the doorway, frozen between guilt and something gentler. He didn't speak, didn't want to break the spell, but when the story ended and the children drifted toward sleep, Celeste looked up and saw him. You don't have to stay past your hours, he said quietly, still not stepping closer. Celeste smiled faintly. They asked me to finish the story. I didn't mind. He nodded awkwardly. I'm giving them what they need. Structure, stability. Her expression softened. She turned back to the book, tracing a page with her fingertip. They need you, Mr. Voss. Not just your structure. You. The words hung in the air, simple, unadorned, but heavy with truth. Adrian had no reply. He stood there for a long moment, then turned and walked away, the echo of her words following him down the hall. That night he couldn't sleep. Her voice replayed in his mind, calm, certain, unafraid to challenge him. It wasn't disrespect. It was honesty, something he hadn't heard in years. From that moment on, he found himself noticing more. The way she hummed softly while folding the twins' laundry. The way she knelt to tie Luna's shoe and whispered something that made the little girl giggle uncontrollably. The way Leo, once quiet and withdrawn, began drawing again, bright suns and stick-figure families smiling under blue skies. Each small moment tugged at something inside Adrian he thought he'd buried forever, and though he tried to ignore it, tried to remind himself she was just a nanny, there were nights when he'd stop at the top of the stairs and listen Listen to the sound of Celeste's laughter mingling with his children's, soft, unrestrained, alive. In those moments, the mansion on Hawthorne Hill no longer felt quite so hollow. It was as if a single gentle presence had opened its doors and let life back in. Adrian didn't understand it. He only knew that when she was near, the silence didn't hurt as much. The days that followed moved differently, softer, somehow. The mansion on Hawthorne Hill, one so still that every footstep echoed like an intrusion, began to breathe again. Not all at once, but in quiet, unexpected ways. A child's giggle slipping through a doorway. Music playing faintly from the kitchen. The smell of pancakes and crayons mixing in the air. Small things. Ordinary things. But inside a house that had known only silence, they felt like miracles. Celeste never made grand gestures. She didn't try to fix anything. She simply was steady, kind, and present in all the places that had long been empty. She'd wake the twins with a story, not an alarm. She'd let them mix the pancake batter, even when half of it ended up on the counter. And when Adrian passed through the room, briefcase in hand, she'd greet him like anyone else. Not as a CO, not as a man with all walls, but as someone human. At first, he didn't quite know how to respond to her warmth. He wasn't used to someone meeting his gaze without fear or calculation. But Celeste never flinched under his stare. She spoke to him in the same calm tone she used with the children, gentle but firm when it mattered. One evening, as the sun melted into the horizon, Adrian came home to find the twins sitting at the dining table, paintbrushes in hand. Celeste had spread old newspaper across the surface, and tiny jars of watercolor were scattered everywhere. Luna's fingers were stained pink and blue. Leo had somehow managed to get green paint on his cheek. Adrian froze in the doorway, instinct tightening his jaw. Paint on his table. Celeste noticed his expression. She smiled, dipping her brush into gold. "We're making the sunset," she said simply. He exhaled slowly. "On my mahogany table." Her eyes met his, calm, unbothered. "It washes off. Sunsets don't wait for permission." For a second, he almost argued. Then Luna looked up at him and held out her tiny painting, a clumsy swirl of yellow and orange. "Daddy, this one's yours." Something inside him softened. He took the paper carefully, as if it might crumble in his hands. "It's beautiful," he murmured. Celeste smiled faintly and turned back to the children, pretending not to notice the way his voice had changed. After that, the colors stayed. The next morning, the table was spotless, but a new rule had been written quietly into the rhythm of the house. Laughter and messes were allowed here now. As the weeks passed, Adrian found himself lingering longer before leaving for work. The twins had started eating breakfast before he did, because Celeste made it feel like a gathering, not an obligation. There were star-shaped pancakes, sticky fingers, and half-finished stories that carried into the day. Sometimes, he'd catch himself smiling without realizing it. A small, startled kind of smile, like he'd forgotten how. Late one evening, rain began to fall against the tall glass windows. The twins were tucked in, the house finally quiet. Adrian walked downstairs, intent on finishing a few more emails before bed. But then he saw her. Celeste was in the living room, the soft glow of a floor lamp casting gold light around her. She was humming some old tune he couldn't quite place, while mending Luna's stuffed bear, the one with the missing button eye. The thread caught the light, glinting silver. Her movements were slow, patient, almost reverent. He watched for a moment, unseen. There was something in her stillness that disarmed him, the way she made care look effortless, the way she filled the quiet without trying to fill it. "Working overtime, Miss Rowan?" he said finally, his voice breaking the calm. She looked up, startled, then smiled. "Only for important clients." He stepped closer. "The bear?" She nodded. He's seen better days. But some things are worth fixing, even if they'll never be perfect again. Adrian hesitated. That simple sentence hit harder than she probably knew. He cleared his throat. "I suppose that's true. Besides," she added softly, "the twins believe he can't sleep until he's whole again." He couldn't think of a response to that, so he just stood there, hands in his pockets, and listened to her hum until the clock chimed 11. After that night, something changed between them, subtle, unspoken, but real. Adrian began noticing the little things, how she always crouched to the twins' level when speaking to them, how she listened, really listened when they spoke. And the twins, they blossomed under her care. Leo, who once drew only gray buildings and cars, now painted trees, kites, and smiling faces. Luna, who used to whisper when she spoke, now sang while brushing her hair. One afternoon, Celeste found Adrian standing outside his office door, watching them through the glass wall of the playroom. The twins were building a fort out of couch cushions, giggling as one tower collapsed. He looked almost out of place there, the man who built skyscrapers, watching a cardboard castle rise and fall before his eyes. They're learning how to build things that fall down, Celeste said gently, appearing beside him. He turned to her, brow furrowed. That's supposed to be a good thing? She nodded. Yes, because now they know how to laugh when it happens. Her words hung in the air, soft and certain. Adrian didn't reply. He only looked back at his children, a faint shadow of something like understanding in his eyes. From that day, the changes became impossible to ignore. He started coming home earlier. Sometimes he'd sit on the floor with the twins and let them teach him board games he didn't understand. Sometimes, after they'd gone to bed, he and Celeste would end up in the kitchen, drinking tea, talking about everything except the past. Those moments didn't feel like grand gestures or new beginnings. They felt human, ordinary in the best way. And though neither of them would have admitted it, they both felt the same quiet truth taking root. The kind that grows slow and steady, like light creeping in after a long storm. The mansion on Hawthorne Hill was no longer silent. It had learned to breathe again. And for the first time in years, Adrian Voss wasn't just living inside a house. He was beginning to remember what it felt like to come home. The weather had been restless all day. Gray skies pressing low over the mansion, wind teasing at the trees as if warning of what was coming. By nightfall, the storm finally broke. Thunder rolled across the hill like an unspoken truth, shaking the glass walls that had always stood so still. Inside, the twins huddled together in their room, the flicker of lightning slicing briefly across their faces. Leo tried to be brave for his sister, but every crash of thunder made him flinch. Luna whimpered, clutching her bear close. And before anyone could tell him otherwise, they slipped out of bed and ran down the hall, bare feet against cold marble, until they reached Celeste's room. She was already awake. The moment the door opened, she saw their frightened faces and held her arms open without a word. They climbed into her bed, small bodies trembling under blanket as rain beat against the windows. "It's all right," she whispered, her voice low and steady. "The thunder's just the clouds playing drums." Luna peeked up. "Drums." Celeste smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Hum. The clouds get bored sometimes, so they make music." Leo let out a small, shaky laugh. "It's loud music." She chuckled softly. "The best kind." Outside, lightning flashed again, a quick burst of silver, and this time the twins didn't scream. They just huddled closer, listening as Celeste again hummed a tune so soft it blended with the rain. A few minutes later, there was a quiet knock at the door. Adrian stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable in the dim light. He was wearing a simple gray shirt, sleeves rolled up, no trace of the polished image he carried through the day. For a moment, he just watched, the scene almost too tender to disturb. The twins were safe in her arms. The fire from the small sitting room cast a golden glow across their faces. It was such a small, ordinary thing, warmed comfort, and yet it felt foreign to him. "I came to check on them," he said finally. Celeste looked up. They were scared. The storm woke them. He nodded, stepping closer. "You didn't have to." "I know," she said gently, "but I wanted to." He hesitated, unsure what to do with his hands, his voice, his emotions. Then, seeing how the twins were already half asleep, he simply sighed and lowered himself into the chair near the fire. The thunder grumbled again, quieter now. For a while, no one spoke. The storm outside carried the conversation for them, wind whispering against the windows, rain tapping on glass, the occasional faraway rumble. Celeste glanced at him through the flickering firelight. He looked different here. Not the distant, immovable soul she'd first met, but a man who looked like he'd forgotten how to rest. "You never let yourself stop, do you?" she asked softly. He blinked, caught off guard. "Stop. Working. Planning. Controlling." Her voice stayed calm, but not unkind. "You move like you're afraid of what happens when you stand still." Adrian's jaw tightened. "I'm not afraid. I just don't have that luxury." "Everyone does," she said. "You just forgot how to take it." He looked at her, really looked at her, and something in his chest shifted uneasily. The way she spoke to him, it wasn't pity. It wasn't admiration. It was honesty, and that, more than anything, unsettled him. "I built everything I have by not standing still," he said finally, his tone quieter now. Celeste nodded. "And yet, here you are, sitting still, and it's not so bad." A small silence followed, heavy but not uncomfortable. The twins had drifted off completely. Luna's head resting on Celeste's arm, Leo's hand clutching the edge of the blanket. Adrian's gaze softened. "They haven't slept like that in a long time," he murmured. "They feel safe," she replied. "That's all they needed." He stared at the fire for a long moment, the light catching in his eyes. "I used to be able to do that," he said quietly. "Make them feel safe." Celeste turned her head toward him. "You still can." He gave a small, bitter laugh. "I'm not sure they even know who I am anymore." "Then let them find you again," she said simply. "It's not too late." Her voice was gentle, but it landed like truth, sharp and unavoidable. For a moment, their eyes met, and something wordless passed between them. Not romantic, not yet, but intimate in a way neither expected. Two people carrying different kinds of brokenness, recognizing in each other like a mirror. The thunder rolled again, distant now, softer. Adrian looked at the sleeping twins, then back at her. "You should rest," he said. Celeste smiled faintly. "You too." But he didn't move. Not for a while. He stayed there, watching the firelight dance across their faces. Hers calm and steady, theirs peaceful for the first time in weeks. When he finally stood, he looked down at her one last time before leaving. "Good night, Celeste." "Good night, Mr. Voss." He closed the door behind him, and for a moment, he stood in the dark hallway, listening. The storm outside was fading, but the one inside him was just beginning to stir. He returned to his study, tried to drown his thoughts in work, but her words refused to leave him. "You move like you're afraid of what happens when you stand still." He sat there for hours, staring at the empty screen in front of him, realizing how right she was. For years, silence had been his armor, his excuse, his safety. But tonight, that silence had been replaced by the sound of laughter, by warmth, by life. And that frightened him more than loneliness ever had. Because for the first time in years, Adrian Voss felt peace. And he didn't know if he was ready to let it in. Morning came quiet and gray, the kind of stillness that follows a storm. When everything feels washed clean, yet strangely unsettled. The mansion stood bathed in soft light, peaceful on the surface, but something unseen had begun to stir beneath that calm. Adrian sat alone in his library, surrounded by shelves of architectural models and old sketches, reminders of everything he had built and everything he had lost. He'd come there looking for a project file, something routine, something safe. But as he opened a lower drawer, a small leather-bound journal slipped free, falling open on the floor. He frowned. It wasn't his. When he picked it up, the handwriting stopped him. Neat, looping letters on cream-colored paper. Celeste's. He hesitated, knowing he shouldn't look, but curiosity, or maybe something deeper, tugged at him. A single page fluttered open, and a faded newspaper clipping fell to the ground. He bent down slowly, and the words caught the light. Architect Elias Hart among victims of the Midtown collapse. Project funded by Voss Design Group. For a moment, the air seemed to leave the room. The Midtown collapse. A tragedy he had tried to bury under years of work in silence. The one stain on his company's name. A building that should have stood tall, but crumbled instead. Faulty materials, a subcontractor's mistake, legal absolution, but 3 people had died. And one of them was Elias Hart. Adrian's pulse quickened. The name felt familiar now, the way a shadow feels familiar when you finally turn to face it. He looked back at the journal, at her handwriting. Celeste Rowan, Elias Hart's fiancée. The truth fell into place like bricks collapsing one by one. Every look, every question, every moment she seemed to understand his pain before he spoke it. It all twisted in his mind. Kindness turning into strategy, compassion into calculation. His heart pounded as anger surged through the disbelief. Was this all a plan? A quiet revenge? Had she come into his home to watch him unravel? By the time the sun began to dip below the horizon, his jaw was set and his eyes were cold again, the familiar mask sliding back into place. He waited in the foyer that evening, the marble floors gleaming under the chandelier light. The air felt heavier than usual, as if the mansion itself sensed what was coming. The door opened. Celeste stepped inside, shaking the rain from her coat, her smile soft and tired from a long day with the twins. The moment she saw him standing there, her expression shifted, his posture too rigid, his silence too sharp. "Mr. Voss?" she asked gently. He didn't answer right away. His gaze was fixed, his voice controlled when he finally spoke. "Was this your plan?" She blinked. "I'm not sure He took a step forward, holding up the clipping. "Don't play innocent. Elias Hart. The Midtown collapse. My company funded that project." Her breath caught. "Adrian, did you think I wouldn't find out?" His voice rose, low and dangerous. "You walked into my home under a false name. You smiled at my children. You—" "Stop," she said softly, pain flickering in her eyes. "I didn't come here to hurt you." "Then why are you here?" he demanded. "To make me feel guilty? To make me pay?" Tears welled up, but she didn't look away. "I came because they needed someone. Leo, Luna, they needed laughter again. I came to help them heal." His jaw tightened. "And me?" Celeste shook her head, her voice trembling but steady. "You were never part of any plan. I didn't even know you were you until after I took the job. But when I saw your name, when I realized," her breath hitched. "I wanted to leave, but the children, they—" Adrian cut her off sharply. "Don't you dare use them as an excuse." "I'm not," she said, her voice breaking now. "I stayed because they loved you. Because despite everything, they needed you. And somewhere along the way," she paused, tears glistening in her lashes. "So did I." For a heartbeat, silence, just the rain outside and the slow tick of the grandfather clock. But the storm inside him had already taken over. "I don't need your sympathy," he said quietly. "And my family doesn't need your forgiveness." Her face crumpled, but she stood her ground. "Forgiveness," she whispered. "I didn't come here for revenge, Adrian. I came because I know what grief looks like when it consumes someone, and I saw it in you the same way I saw it in myself." He turned away, unable to meet her eyes. "Pack your things. You've done enough." Her breath caught again, a sound halfway between disbelief and heartbreak. "Please don't do this in front of them." "They'll understand," he said, though his voice faltered for the first time. "Eventually." Celeste's hand trembled as she set her bag down on the floor. For a moment, she seemed like she might try again, might try to reach him through the wall he'd just rebuilt. But she saw in his eyes, the door was already closed. So she nodded, quietly, resolutely. "Take care of them," she said. "And take care of yourself, even if you don't think you deserve it." Then she turned and walked toward the staircase. Leo and Luna were there, small figures in pajamas, peeking down from the landing. Luna's eyes were wide and wet. Leo's lower lip trembled. "Are you leaving?" Luna whispered. Celeste froze, her voice barely audible. "Yes, sweetheart, but you'll be okay. You have your daddy." Leo shook his head. "But we want you too." She reached out, touching their hands lightly. "You have everything you need right here." Her gaze flickered toward Adrian, and for a split second, he thought he saw forgiveness there. Not pity, not blame, just understanding. Then she turned and walked out into the rain. The sound of the front door closing echoed to the halls, hollow and final. The twins cried on the staircase, calling her name, their voices fading as Adrian stood frozen in the foyer. The storm outside raged again, thunder rolling low across the valley. And just like that, the mansion on Hawthorne Hill fell silent once more, colder, emptier than before. But this time, it wasn't just grief filling the air. It was regret, and the faint, sinking realization that he might have just driven away the only person who had ever truly seen him. Days passed, then a week, and slowly, the laughter that had filled the mansion, the laughter Celeste had brought back, vanished completely. The silence returned, heavier than before. But now it didn't feel clean. It felt wrong, like a melody missing its heart. Adrian tried to keep the house running, as it always had. Breakfast at 7, meetings at 9, dinners precisely plated but barely touched. Yet something had changed, not in the walls, but in the air between them. Leo no longer drew his bright, messy pictures. Luna stopped humming the song Celeste used to sing while brushing her hair. They were quiet now, not out of discipline, but heartbreak. And Adrian, he felt it every moment. Every hollow sound of the ticking clock. He'd built his life on order, control, and silence, but now silence was unbearable. One morning, he found himself in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, trying to flip pancakes the way Celeste did, golden, fluffy, shaped like stars. But the batter burned, the smoke alarm shrieked, and Luna cried because they don't smell right. He stood there, holding the spatula, completely lost. He could command an empire, but he couldn't make breakfast for his children without breaking something. Inside or out, that night, after tucking them into bed, he wandered down the dim hallway toward the playroom. It was dark, the moonlight spilling into the tall windows. He almost turned back until he saw it, a small drawing pinned to the wall. The paper was crinkled, the colors uneven, crayons bright, childish lines forming four figures. 2 small children, a tall man, and a woman with golden hair. Standing between them, below it, written in a child's uneven scrawl, were 5 simple words. Miss Celeste fixed Daddy's heart. Adrian froze. His chest tightened. The air caught in his throat. He reached out, fingertips brushing the paper like it was something sacred. It hit him then, sharp and sudden. Celeste hadn't come to destroy him. She hadn't come for revenge. She came to heal. Not the kind of healing that forgets pain, but the kind that learns to live with it. She hadn't just cared for his children. She had cared for him in quiet ways he hadn't even noticed. Every smile she drew from the twins, every gentle challenge to his routines, every small act of warmth she brought into the cold rooms of his life. He thought she had come to reopen his wounds, but she came to teach him how to live with them. For the first time in years, Adrian felt tears fall freely, not the kind born from anger or guilt, but from something deeper, something human. He sank into the chair beside the drawing, staring at it through blurred eyes. The sound of his own breathing filled the room, uneven and raw. The paper trembled slightly in his hands, but the message stayed steady, glowing in the faint moonlight. Miss Celeste fixed Daddy's heart. In that moment, he understood. He hadn't lost her because she betrayed him. He'd lost her because fear had told him to. Fear of feeling again. Fear of letting love in. And for the first time since the accident, since his wife's death, he realized he didn't want to be afraid anymore. He stood, quietly, the drawing still in his hand. In the silence of the mansion, the same silence that had once been his refuge. Adrian Voss made a decision. He was done running from the ghosts. He was done building walls. It was time to find her, to tell her the truth, to bring warmth back where it belonged. Because Celeste hadn't just healed his family. She had reminded him that broken things could still be made beautiful again. The next morning, the world outside was soft, washed in a pale gold light that felt almost forgiving. The sky stretched wide, calm after so many restless nights. For the first time in a long while, Adrian didn't head to the office. He didn't open his laptop, didn't check the time, didn't look at the calendar. He simply got in his car and drove. The city passed in quiet blurs, glass towers, busy streets, strangers carrying on with their lives. Yet through it all, one thought guided him, steady and certain. He had to find her. It didn't take long. He found Celeste in a small park on the east side of town, the kind with creaky benches, old trees, and children chasing bubbles through the morning air. She sat alone, sketchbook on her knees, a faint smile curving her lips as she watched the world move around her. For a moment, he just stood there, watching her, listening to the sound she brought back into his life. Laughter, light, the soft hum of something alive. Then quietly he walked forward. She looked up, startled. Her hand froze midline, pencil hovering above the page. Adrian. His voice was softer than she remembered. Not the clipped, careful tone of the man she once worked for. You're still healing others, he said. A faint, uncertain smile touched her lips. It's what I know how to do. He nodded, stepping closer. I used to think healing meant fixing what was broken. He paused, eyes lowering to grass. But you taught me. Sometimes it just means learning to live with the cracks. Celeste's breath caught. There was no accusation in his voice, no anger, only understanding, and something gentler, something like peace. I found the drawing, he said quietly. Lil wrote that you fix my heart. His eyes glimmered, and he was right. You did. You showed them love again. You showed me how to breathe again. Her gaze softened, her voice trembling. Adrian, I never wanted to. I know, he interrupted gently. I know you didn't. He took another step, his tone breaking with emotion. I pushed you away because it was easier than facing what I felt. But the truth is, he exhaled shakily. The truth is, I wasn't afraid of what you were hiding. I was afraid of what you made me feel alive. For a long, fragile moment, neither of them spoke. The world seemed to pause, holding its breath. Then she whispered, Grief doesn't choose sides, Adrian. It just needs somewhere gentle to rest. He looked up, eyes meeting hers. Then stay, he said softly. Stay and let it rest with us. Her lips trembled. If I come back, she hesitated, the faintest flicker of hope in her tone. It won't be as a nanny. He smiled, a real smile, the kind that started in the heart and reached the eyes. No, he said, not as a nanny, as home. The words hung between them, simple, honest, and enough. Celeste's eyes shimmered. She nodded, tears slipping quietly down her cheeks. When they returned to mansion later that day, Leo and Luna came running down the hall, voices bright, laughter spilling into every corner. The house, once silent, came alive again, warmth seeping into walls that had forgotten what joy felt like. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. The rigid schedule softened. Pancakes on Sundays, movie nights under blankets, crayon drawings taped to the fridge again. And Adrian, the man who had once measured life in deadlines and blueprints, began measuring it instead in moments, in smiles, in the sound of laughter echoing down the hall. A year later, under the old willow tree in the backyard, the same spot where Celeste once read stories to the twins, Adrian knelt on one knee. The twins watched with wide, eager eyes, hands clasped together, whisper with excitement. Celeste stood before him, sunlight filtering through the branches, her golden hair glowing softly in the breeze. Celeste Rowan, he said, voice steady but full of emotion. You didn't just heal my family. He paused, eyes shining. You became it. For a moment, she didn't speak. Tears shimmered in her eyes as she nodded. A quiet, trembling yes escaping her lips before he could even finish the question. Leo and Luna cheered, wrapping their arms around them both. The four of them stood there, a family rebuilt not from perfection, but from forgiveness, tenderness, and love. As the sun dipped low behind them, the garden filled with laughter, the kind that doesn't just sound beautiful, it feels like coming home. And the mansion on Hawthorne Hill, once cold and silent, now echoed with the very thing it had long forgotten, life. Because sometimes home isn't the walls we build, it's the people brave enough to step inside them and teach us how to live again. Time passed. Seasons shifted softly over Hawthorne Hill. The mansion, once a monument of silence and sorrow, now breathed with life. There were crayons on the counters and books half opened on the floor. Adrian Voss, the man who once built walls out of glass and grief, had finally learned to build something far greater, a home. He'd watch Celeste chase the children to the garden, her laughter light and unguarded. He'd smile, a quiet smile only a man who's known loss can truly wear. Because love didn't erase what came before. It simply gave the scars a gentler place to rest. Celeste never tried to fill the space his late wife left behind. Instead, she brought light to cracks, showing him that healing isn't about forgetting, but learning to live alongside the past. And Adrian finally understood. Grief and love are two sides of the same coin. To feel one deeply is to have known the other. On quiet evenings, he would take her hand and whisper, "You saved us." She would shake her head softly. "No, Adrian, we saved each other." And maybe that was the truth all along. Love doesn't arrive like a storm to erase what's broken. It seeps in quietly through laughter and forgiveness. It doesn't heal by force. It heals by staying. Because love that stays is the kind that changes everything. The kind that turns a mansion back into a home, a man back into a father, and grief back into grace. And as the lights of Hawthorne Hill glowed against the night, one truth lingered. Even the strongest hearts can break. But with love, they can also learn to beat again. And that is how a broken home found its way back to love. If this story touched your heart even a little, don't forget to subscribe and join our growing family here on Heartfelt Tales TV, where every story reminds us love always finds a way.